The most helpful negotiation advice I ever got was from a woman named Sophie Carter, who, sold stuff all around Europe, and her personal sales target was 200 million euros per year. So she knew her stuff, and she was doing these negotiations and these sales into, big companies that are traditionally very tough to negotiate with. And her key insight, for me anyway, was that when you're negotiating as an entrepreneur or a founder or whatever, the people you negotiate with are full-time negotiators, whereas for you it's something that you do very much on the side. You're an enthusiastic, motivated amateur, right? You talk to an investor or you talk to a big buyer at an enterprise company that you're selling to. It is their full-time job to negotiate. And so if you meet them on even ground, you're going to lose because they do this all day. They're the best in the world, and you're trying to figure it out. And the toughest situation for you to compete evenly is what you might think of as a hot situation. Like, it's hot, it's live, the emotions are flaring. You're worried about losing the deal. You're worried about looking silly. All these in the moment emotions make it really hard to think. And sometimes the thinking is slow. From their perspective, they've seen it all before, so they can really quickly pattern match you. They go, oh, it's one of these. They need a deal like this, or we can try this approach to the negotiation with them. Whereas for you, if you're building a startup or you're starting a freelance career, you're often going to be figuring this stuff out from kind of first principles. You're like, wow, what is appropriate? How much can we offer in this situation? What is the correct give and take that's not going to dig us into a hole 2 years from now where we're servicing an ultimately unprofitable contract? And that stuff takes time. And also the stakes are really high for you. For them, they're like, we don't get to try this new product. For you, you're like, man, I really need this money. It matters. And so all of this creates an imbalance. And what Sophie told me is she goes, you're always allowed to pause and delay it a day, like always. And I was like, no, that can't be true. Like, I have to make the decision right then. And she goes, no, this is what they want you to think. They benefit the most when you're forced to make every decision live, because that's where they're going to have the biggest advantage over you. This feeling of like, it has to happen now. You got to make a decision now. The deal's going to disappear if you can't decide right now. All of this stuff is a really, they're not always doing it with hostile intention. They sometimes are. Sometimes they're doing it because they're used to working with other professional negotiators who can also, like, they've got the pattern matching down. But if you're coming at it from a different perspective, like, you're allowed to pause it. And the way you do this is you basically say, you use the live conversation for information gathering. Use it to learn. Use it to understand their goals, understand their objections, understand everything. I mean, mom test stuff, kind of, right? And then you go away and you go, okay, I totally get where you're coming from. Let me go away and put together a proposal for you. You leave, you write up the one-pager proposal. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be a glamorous PDF. It can be an email kind of stating your understanding of their goals and their needs and their objections and blockers, and then, what you propose. And they don't say yes or no. This is another misunderstanding about negotiation, is that we put way too much stress on each piece of messaging that we send out. We go, I have to put everything in here because they need every question answered. No, incorrect. What needs to happen is you need to send enough for the conversation to continue. That doesn't mean you need to intentionally withhold, but it does mean that you should free yourself of this burden of needing a perfect answer to every situation for every contingency. If you give them enough and they go, oh, we can continue this conversation. This doesn't work for us, but this might. I think you're missing something important here. That is negotiation. It's not this raw, like, heavy-handed battle of the mind sort of thing that you see in reality TV. It's more like, I guess picking a house with a flatmate or deciding which, like, school your kid goes to with your partner. It's like a conversation where you both have goals and requirements, and you're sort of working through it together amicably. In most cases, even with pretty high dollar values, I've had negotiations up to, 250,000, 500,000 contract value, and, plus fundraising and stuff. And if someone's being really hostile to you, it's probably a good sign that you might not want to sign that contract with them, because if they're really throwing their weight around during original negotiations, it probably doesn't improve from there. And you can get into the hostile negotiations later when your company's a bit more mature, but it's pretty tough if it's going to be your first few customers or your first few investors, because you kind of need those people to be on your side of the table and not causing you a ton of unnecessary drama. So I got a little rambly there, but the point is that separate, like, use the hot live conversation for information gathering. say like, okay, I think I get it. Let me go away. Use the proposal writing as your excuse to take a pause. I get it. Let me take a day. I'll get back to you by tomorrow. Write up a proposal based on what we've heard here. And then that proposal doesn't have to have everything. Proposal is probably even the wrong word. It's just like a summary of what you understand and what you suggest, what you propose, right? A proposal. It can be an email with some bullet points. And then from there, it doesn't have to do everything. It just has to continue the conversation. Like my mom's trying to buy a house right now. Buying a house is a really simple proposal, negotiation, whatever. And we have to run through a translator. The negotiation is in Catalan. And so Teresa, my partner, has been writing the emails. And it's interesting where like each email or each message, she's like, but we need to answer all these questions. Like, no, we don't. We just need to give just enough for the conversation to continue, right? It's like, but they're going to reject it. It's like, okay, let them reject it. Like, we're going to continue to have that conversation. And that's how it played out. It took a few emails and a few back and forths and a few changes in price and a few discoveries of objections we didn't know about. But, it looks like it's going to work out. So I don't know. Hopefully you find that helpful. Just don't pressure yourself with this false requirement to do everything live and everything in the moment. Because if you try, you're going to lose. You're going to lose to negotiators who are way better in the live situation than you are. So use the pause, use the proposal, come back, do your thinking when you're cool. Use your team, involve your team in that decision making. All that stuff's really helpful. And if someone gives you a super hard time and you lose the deal, don't beat yourself up too much over it because they were probably going to be a nightmare anyway.